Mario Kart Wii! Woohoo!
I don't think there's a single game that's ever been made that feels quite like Mario Kart Wii. This game has an essence all of its own, and because of that, anyone who grew up playing this game is bound to be extremely nostalgic for it. The game almost feels like it was designed to evoke nostalgia. Look at you, I see you through the screen, you smiling just thinking about Mario Kart Wii. You love this game, you sly devil, I know it. The main thing I think that makes this game so memorable and so nostalgic for everybody and just so incredible in general is the world building of its original tracks. I'm not talking about race mechanics, I'm not talking about the track layouts, I'm talking about atmosphere. Starting off with an absolute banger, we have, of course, Mushroom Gorge. Mushroom Gorge is a genius course because it takes the familiarity of mushrooms being a major part of Mario's just identity and turns it into something new with a completely new vibe. Mushroom theming in a Mario game is usually just kind of an introductory thing, just a world 1-1. It's the plain basic power-up, but here it's like a mountainous adventure with entire clouds and shorter mushrooms below you. The mushrooms you actually drive on feel like these massive towering structures, and there's absolutely no shortage of them. Beyond the ones that you bounce off of during the race, there's so many out in the distance. These ones in the distance are just true behemoths, kind of reminding me of redwood trees in California. Having these out there really just accentuates the magnitude of just how massive Mushroom Gorge really is. And that just does wonders for the world building of the course. The sound design and music play a really big part in that world building as well. There's a slight whistling, windy sound that you can hear especially well whenever you're starting the race, and that perfectly emulates the feeling of a breeze wafting through the canyon. I can't really fully explain it, but when I hear that sound effect, it activates the vertigo thing inside my brain, and the heights of the towering mushrooms just get that much higher, and it feels more exhilarating. And the music is all folky and just screams mountains. It sounds like if you yodeled, but on a flute. And then there's that funky electronic beat mixed in there too to give you that classic Wii sound. And together with that and the flute, it makes something that's just totally original. And then the cave section just continues to be peak world building. You can feel the altitude in here more than most places on the course because you're literally suspended in the air for most of it. And that's way, way above the clouds at the bottom of the cavern. Plus the fact that there's no path and you can't even see the ground, it really sells the fact of it being a gorge. I also have to point out the little spores that are floating across the screen while you're in here. Not only is it a realistic touch to add these in, but it adds a layer of spirituality to the environment. It just feels so much more mystic and sacred because of it. I also love the way that the cave walls are designed with these crystal shards poking out as well as little tiny baby mushrooms. Both of those things are so colorful and it provides a really great contrast with the darker lighting of the cave, which the cave's dark lighting contrasts perfectly with the outside and the daylight. That gives you kind of a sense of exploration as you traverse different areas of the gorge. And I think for such a short course, having that sense of exploration is extremely impressive. It's also extremely impressive how much I've had to talk about such a short course. So why don't we go ahead and bounce on over to Coconut Mall. Coconut Mall is filled with a trillion little details that really make it embody the feeling of being in a mall without actually trying to sell you something. The glory days are over, everyone. Half of the advertisements in the mall are just advertisements for the mall. And honestly, I really prefer that over them trying to sell me the Wii Babysitting Mama interactive baby. With that said, they still do a good job of making you feel like a customer. From the very moment that you step inside the mall, you're already greeted with tons of different ads and posters and everything. Just like the real thing. You even get a directory overhead that tells you where everything is. Well, not everything, but hey, at least you know where the bathrooms are. Then there's signs for stores all over. You've got everything from Coconut Cafe, Cocoa Coffee, Cocoa Mode, Lady Cocoa, and Fountain Cafe if you have a cocoa allergy. There's also Delfino Dream, which is like a little store that you can go inside of as part of the track, and it's like a little shortcut with these extremely polygonal shirts on display. Triangle tees. They're in style. Also, the sheer size of Coconut Mall is so impressive. There's like 5 entire stories with Miis and other characters just crowding the rails, and that makes it seem like insanely crowded. There's stuff above you, below you, and the rows of stores just stretch on for miles. And of course, as I've mentioned previously, there's a whole nother layer of theming on top of it just being a mall. It's a beachy seaside mall. You've got a big Pianta billboard at the front entrance, and a clientele of dancing Piantas like all around you. And when there's Piantas around, you know you're at the beach. Plus, there's plenty of tropical flowers all around, palm trees with the coconuts hanging from them, and a whole section of the mall is an outdoor pavilion where the sun is shining and everything just looks super bright. And if none of that is proof enough, there's literally a store called Tropical Grocery. Oh yeah, and there's a beach. You can see the beach whenever you jump from the thing. There's literally a beach. There's also, of course, the parking lot section, and having this crowded area full of cars really adds to the accuracy of the mall experience, especially the mall experience of the 2000s. There's also a couple sections that I think are kind of unappreciated. The first one is the food court, which has 2 stands selling cocoa burgers. Once again, it's perfectly accurate because the reason they're unappreciated is because literally no one takes this route because everyone wants to do the ramp instead. And it's accurate because no one eats at food courts inside of malls, unless they want food poisoning. But that less traveled path also leads to this nice little sunroom. It's got like a little garden centerpiece and like, I don't know, the glass walls. It's so nice and peaceful in here and just, like I said, really unappreciated. I think overall this track is really masterful at creating these kind of half inside, half outside areas. It's kind of the same thing with that little outdoor courtyard. All of these areas just really encapsulate a nice, chill, summertime atmosphere. But it's not always chill, it's actually really exciting to be in here. And the music plays a big part in creating that excitement. It's fast-paced and upbeat, and whatever bells or sound effects that they use, that sounds so much like scanners or cash register sounds that you'd expect whenever you're going shopping. Plus you've got like a clapping beat going on too, and that really ramps up just the cheerfulness, like you're being cheered on by everyone from the sidelines. And finally, there's steel pan sounds that are tucked in there to represent the tropicality of the course. They managed to imbue the music with everything that gives Coconut Mall its distinct personality. You have the climate, the shopping mall aesthetic, and just the overall exciting, cheerful vibes. It's really just a masterpiece of a soundtrack. Overall, this course transforms the race from just a regular race to more like a Black Friday race to get the last flat screen TV at the TJ Maxx. But the bright, sunny atmosphere and the exciting music makes it feel like you were the one to get the flat screen TV, like you won the Black Friday. I don't know, man. Coconut Mall just radiates pure joy. This course is just so bright and fun, and it provides one of my favorite atmospheres, not just in Mario Kart Wii, but honestly, I was gonna say like in all of Mario, but really just all of media for me. I love this so much. And while we're on the topic of the tropics, next up is Koopa Cape. This track is pretty diverse in its aquatic theming, with half of the track being very tropical. It's humid and beachy and, dare I say, oceanic, while the other half is more of a temperate river adventure. The tropical feeling really comes through at the start of the course. You've got this seashell pattern outlining the track. There's seagulls flying overhead, boats driving around in the water down below, and you start by overlooking the entire expanse of the ocean. Plus, I just want to mention the texture on the seawater is just fantastic. It's a perfect cartoonish blue, but it has that netting of white to kind of simulate the waves and just the movement of the water. And the bloom effect really adds to how crisp and refreshing the water looks to swim in. Then you race to a river section, which seems like it might have a bit more of a cooler climate, with like kind of pine and evergreen trees all around you, as opposed to like palm trees you'd expect from a tropical place. Plus there's like grass and bushes and ferns and like wooden ramps, and everything is just a lot more forest-like here. It's like someplace you might expect for a Boy Scouts summer camp where you get your Koopa Stomping merit badge, and then be given a wedgie by Todd from the rival troop. Not speaking from experience here, just I'm not speaking from experience at all. Even if you were getting bullied, you can't deny just how brisk the air must feel here. I'm just imagining the sweet smell of pine needles wafting through the breeze. And the breeze also carrying this like soothing mist off of the water. And the air is the perfect temperature, not too hot, not too cold, just the perfect camping weather overall, and that both contrasts and complements the humidity of the first section. Then you fall down the waterfall down into the underwater tunnel section, which once again has its own unique atmosphere. You can see cheeps and eels like swimming all around you. There's patches of coral and other non-specific ocean vegetation. But like, I don't need to explain to you why being in an underwater tunnel is like the coolest thing ever. This shit is awesome and you know it. Like, underwater tunnels in real life are so magical and ethereal, and they do such a good job of recreating that magic here. Plus, adding the water park water slide kind of element with the rushing water, adding that to the already awesomeness of being in an underwater tunnel is just the cherry on top. In addition to all that, there's like a strip of neon lights kind of lining the underwater tunnel that adds a completely new technological aspect to an otherwise very nature-y course. And even on top of that, you have the pipes everywhere and the pipe sound effect that plays whenever you enter the underwater tunnel. All of that gives you this distinctly Mario vibe on top of all the already just fantastic and complex world building they've already done. And of course the big Koopa shell in the ocean and the big Koopa in the river part, and the Koopa pattern like outlining the track in some places, and just like all the Koopa stuff. That all does that job as well. By the way, how did a Koopa get that big? Get like so extremely massive? Bro must have had like one too many mega mushrooms at the Golden Corral. The sound design once again is amazing on this track, with the sound of rushing water everywhere, whether it be from the Whitewater River that you ride along or the sounds of the waterfall crashing down. Just to prove how effective these water sound effects are, I'm listing the amount of times that I had to go use the bathroom, number 1 specifically, while editing this video. Then there's the sound of the seagulls overhead and the steel pans and the music, and the way the music gets all muted and echoey whenever you go into the underwater tunnel is just like what like anything sounds like whenever you're underwater. Even though you technically are in a tunnel and you're not like actually underwater, but just regardless, it's the perfect touch. Overall, this course has such a unique, craggy coastline atmosphere. It's not just the mountains, but it's not just another beach course. And because of that, it really has its identity all of its own. And really, the same can be said for all of these original Mario Kart Wii courses. There's just genuinely nothing out there that feels quite like them. There's also nothing I've experienced quite like Maple Treeway. I don't think there's a single level in a video game in the entirety of video game history that more perfectly encapsulates the feeling of autumn than Maple Treeway. The entire track is covered in the most autumnal orange hue possible, with little shades of yellow and brown thrown in there as well. Plus, there's like this effect with little leaves falling down everywhere to really accentuate that fall vibe. And pretty much the entire track is covered with this maple leaf pattern. The edges of the track, the trees above, like the leaves above you, or the track itself whenever you're on top of the tree. There's also the little piles of leaves that you can drive through. And when I drive through one of these, it's like that Ratatouille scene. You know the one where Anton Ego is like transported back to his childhood after taking a bite of food. But like instead of food, it's the game transporting me back to jumping into piles of leaves in real life whenever I was a kid. Also, it's kind of like a cool reverse psychology. Normally in a game, you don't want to run into the obstacles, but in this case, you like actually do. You get kind of like a burst of serotonin for running into it. And you get that because a lot of times you get like a mushroom out of that. But even without getting a mushroom, you still get that big blast of serotonin or dopamine or whatever because of the nostalgia factor, like I said with the Ratatouille example. And then double that because I'm nostalgic for like Mario Kart Wii and just the Wii era of my childhood in general. And that's multiple layers of nostalgia from the Wii era or even earlier whenever I would jump into leaf piles. All of that nostalgia just from this little pile of leaves. Man, I love video games. And while all the leaf motifs are awesome, I really appreciate all of the wooden textures as well, conveying the vibe of it being this massive treehouse that I know everyone dreamed of living in whenever they were a kid. The way you weave underneath the roots and ride along the massive branches and wooden rope bridges. And don't even get me started on the rope trampoline bridge at the end of the lap. They seriously pack more fun and adventure into one lap of this track than I've ever experienced in any adventure movie or any theme park. Any of all of that combined. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. And of course, I've got to talk about the backgrounds and the world building. You've got this massive, sprawling forest all around you, but the track takes place in this one quaint little treehouse community. And it really does feel like this little village because you do actually have little houses and wooden huts. And somehow they also managed to fund a giant cannon in the middle of all of this that I don't know how they afforded or how they power it. But hey, you know, it's still pretty cool. The music and sound design also help really deliver that quaint feeling. It's a relatively soothing tune, but it still matches the tempo of the race. And they also play a similar whistling sound at the beginning, just like Mushroom Gorge. And that gives you that feeling of a breeze whooshing through the trees. Lots of breezes, I'm noticing. I mean, breeze in Koopa Cape and Mushroom Gorge and here. Lots of nice little winds. Everything from the colors to the leaf and wood patterns and just everything all combines to create this crisp, autumnal atmosphere that practically oozes sweet, sticky maple syrup out of the screen. It's the perfect atmosphere, in my opinion. Just like Maple Treeway, Toad's Factory is another prime example of how they can create one seamless environment while still constantly changing your surroundings. You've got different areas with different stages of the item block production process. The first one being the one that I'm sure everyone remembers best, the room where they actually make the item blocks. You've got these giant hydraulic press things that are practically synonymous with like cartoon factories, and they also act as obstacles for the race. I love stuff like this that conveys the theme of the track and gives it its like iconic look and feel, while also kind of serving as an obstacle or just a part of the track itself. Also, just the thought of actually being crushed underneath one of these, like in real life, it makes my knees do the Squidward. So it really adds to the thrill level. Next, you have the loading dock where all the item blocks get loaded into the cargo containers, and also where Toad has put up a giant billboard of his own face, and he's overlooking the entire process. Listen, if I had my own factory, I would do this too. It might be a little bit self-absorbed, but you know what? I can't blame him, because this is pretty awesome. The rest of the areas are cool with the boost panels and everything, but I don't always see how they really play a part in the item production process. But they do add a lot to the overall theme. It's very factory coded. Speaking of being factory coded, this place is chock full with as much mechanical iconography as they could possibly fit into one track. The walls aren't just walls, they're a bunch of these comically large gears. The hydraulic presses, of course, like I mentioned, they're super iconic. But then the outside sections are jam-packed with all these like shipping containers and those big crane things with the hooks, and even historically accurate bulldozers, as opposed to the comically large gears. And then of course there's that one section with like the red flashing emergency lights and the steam like shooting out of all the valves. This room also kind of like adds to that thrill and fear factor because it's like, oh shoot, I am not supposed to be in here. Also, I never really noticed it until the making of this video, but if you look from outside at like the architecture of the factory, this doesn't even look like a factory. This looks like a freaking medieval castle. And then there's like that big wind-up thing like crowning the top of the whole place. And I think that's supposed to be like, you know, like those old toys. I don't know for sure because I wasn't around back then, but it definitely gives the whole atmosphere more of a silly old-timey kind of vibe. That old-fashioned vibe is also accented by the music, which has this like old silent movie kind of sound font on it. And with that and the fact that it's a castle, they keep on adding these little nuanced layers that make it feel like so much more than just another factory level. And none of it has anything to do with mushrooms because, you know, Toad Mushroom. Plus, once again, like a lot of these, the music is just fun and upbeat and jazzy. You've got that clapping beat just like Coconut Mall. I think a lot of those have that, but just overall, it just feels so fun and just happy. Grumble Volcano is one of the most intense and serious feeling courses in this entire game. In fact, the only playful and like fun Nintendo thing I can kind of think of is the question blocks, but those are like buried into the ground like some ancient relic or something, so they don't even feel like silly or cartoonish here. The lighting and colors also really accentuates the seriousness. It's dark and brooding, not just inside the cave parts, but also outside too, with a sky that's covered in this dingy, hazy smog. And the flowing lava glows with this light that permeates the darkness around you, radiating deep oranges and reds that bleed with a heat so hot you can almost feel your skin burning. Plus, outside, there's these dead tree trunks just littering the landscape, like decaying hands sprouting out of the ground. It's something straight out of a horror movie. That fear factor is really heightened by the way the race itself progresses as the land slowly destructs all around you with each passing lap. I'm not gonna lie, even if it's clearly just a Nintendo fun, happy cartoon racer, there is something genuinely unnerving about the ground below you slowly sinking into the magma. For the music and sound design, you have this like low roar that's ever present, and it creates the feeling of the earth quaking as the volcano erupts. And combined with the way that the screen shakes whenever the land sinks into the lava, and giant fireballs rain down from the sky, it all culminates together to create a vibe that's equally terrifying and thrilling at the same time. Plus, the music has this drum or some instrument that really reminds me of like Pacific Island culture, and that adds yet another thematic layer, kind of giving it this tropical vibe, but in a way that it's not like bright and sunny out on the sea like a beach thing, and instead you have this horrific sea of lava that's trapping you on this destroying island, and it's just, your death is completely inevitable. This background is just so bleak. I've talked so much about the world building in each course, but it's a lot more like a world ending. The genre mixing here just goes so insanely hard. It all comes together to create yet another just super unique and original course. The race part though, it ain't easy, I'm telling you. I have trust issues from the amount of time that I thought I was safe and then tried to drive over one of the parts that sinks down into the lava, and then slowly had to just wait there while I was getting past, and then got picked up by Lakitu, and all of a sudden, I'm in last place. I always hated when that happened. I also hated when I come in last place on Wario's Goldmine, which I have such a love-hate relationship with. On the one hand, I love the vibes. It has this like theme park minecart ride aspect to it that I really enjoy. But I cannot neglect how much genuine rage has built up inside of me for every time that I've been knocked off the track and fallen into the Minecraft abyss. And stupid, dumb 10-year-old me had to do this one all the time because it was on the same listing as Coconut Mall, and I didn't want to just, go out and quit because I was stubborn. I didn't want to be a quitter. I could have just done Coconut Mall and then ended it there. I could have done that, but no. I couldn't quit. I had to do it. I had to endure it so many times, and I hated it so much. But luckily, all of that is because of the race, and this is not about the race. This is about the vibes. And the vibes are nice. I like it. They're nice and good. The setting for Wario's Goldmine is insanely cool. For one thing, it takes place at this eternal golden hour, bathing the mountain around you in this yellow hue that wonderfully complements the dusty earthen tones of the area. Then you have this smoke wafting up out of the pipes, and that really drives home the musty atmosphere that's really somehow aesthetically pleasing, despite not being air that I would actually want inside my real-life lungs. The air quality can't be that awful though, because there seems to be an entire community that lives on these cliff sides. There's houses built directly onto the side of the mountain, and I think having that is what makes it seem so nice. The fact that it's clearly a lived-in place makes it infinitely more cozy, and the smoke from the pipes seems a little bit less like gross coal factory smoke and more like, nice chimney smoke. Like, realistically, I wouldn't actually want to live here, especially because, 1 minute you could be just enjoying a nice spaghetti dinner with lots of garlic, because, Wario. But then one of those support beams snaps, and all of a sudden you're doing the goofy scream as you plummet down to your death, hoping Lakitu notices before it's too late. But ignoring that thought, it seems like some pretty creative real estate. Even inside the mine, the thought of plummeting to your death is still ever present though, with the entire thing suspended in what looks like miles above the ground. They did a great job of capturing the very essence of thrill rides here, especially since minecart rides are commonly used as like a vehicle for roller coasters. Pun intended. Plus, the minecarts full of gold just like running by themselves really adds to the mine vibes. But it also adds to the vibes of it being a Wario thing, because of course Wario would optimize this whole operation to be just fully automated. And this whole mine does feel like an actual operation. There's minecarts going above you and in and out of different rooms below you. It feels chaotic and busy in a way that's not just the usual Mario Kart chaos. Like you've stepped into one big scheme in like a crime comedy from the mid-2000s starring Wario himself. DK Summit is a perfect example of how you can take something that's already been done before and not just expand upon it, but creatively rework it at the same time. Mario Kart games had snow courses and mountain courses before, but now they're like really mashed together. And there's also this like ski resort and snowboard theme on top of that. And they really lean into the ski resort idea heavily. There's this ski lift that practically surrounds the entire track. There's also these sporty lines all over the snow. And oh yeah, a giant statue of Mario on a snowboard. And Shy Guy skiing. But I have two major complaints with this track. One, it should have been DK. The statue, it should have been Donkey Kong. It's DK Summit, why is it not Donkey Kong? And then the Shy Guys could have been Kongs or Kremlings or just something that's DK. Ignoring the strange naming choices, it's a pretty fun themed course. Something I think that kind of conveys the wintry vibe they were going for is the fact that everything is wooden, like all the set pieces are wooden. The track below you is wooden, the Jumbotron is wooden, the signs are wooden, the Mario statue is wooden, and every building is like in the style of an old log cabin. And I think that like log cabin aesthetic is what makes it feel wintry. I feel like I think log cabins are really associated with just like being snow capped like that. And speaking of snow, the snow definitely helps with the wintry theme. That plays a big part too. But the wood though, the wooden aesthetic also actually really helps it kind of have that DK theme. It's like the one thing it has going for it that's like distinctly Donkey Kong. Because a lot of Donkey Kong Country games and just DK games in general have like wooden lettering or just overall wooden looking branding. So yeah, that's like literally the only thing that I can connect to make it seem like it's DK Summit. Other than the fact that it should have been DK in the statue and not Mario. He's had the spotlight enough. Give the monkey the love he deserves. Had to get that off my chest. It's pretty incredible how they've managed to make an atmosphere on this track that feels either super thrilling or just like really comfy and cozy, depending on how you look at it. On the surface, of course, it's like a high-speed thrill race with an athletic snowboard theme, but on the other hand, I can just as easily imagine myself like bundled up with a nice warm blanket inside one of these little ski lift cabins. The background really helps convey that snowy, wintry, cozy theme as well. There's just something about the snow-capped pine trees everywhere and the snow-capped mountains and everything is snow-capped. It all creates such a wonderful Christmassy atmosphere without like feeling too frigid or uncomfortable kind of cold. One thing about this track that isn't necessarily cozy or wintry or Christmassy or any of that is the music. But like, I'm perfectly okay with that because this is a banger song. This music is the very essence of Mario Kart Wii, just purified and unfiltered. It's like I said earlier where it's synthy and electronic sounding, but it's also still really funky and jazzy and upbeat. Like this is the exact song that comes to mind whenever I think of Mario Kart Wii music. And not even just that, this is one of the first songs that comes to mind when I just think of Wii music in general. Besides, of course, the obvious one. In Dry Ruins, just like Grumble Volcano, the terrain is kind of changing with every lap. This was an amazing feature that they added because not only does it like shake up the races so they don't feel repetitive, but it brings the environment to life and makes it feel a little bit more like a living, breathing place. I'm not gonna lie and say this is the most creative course they've ever made because a lot of the desert courses look kind of identical, but the changing environment really does help to set it apart. Another way this track feels a little bit more fresh and new is the cave section. It feels ancient in here. With all the torches and hieroglyphics, it really gives off that History Channel vibe. And the way the whole temple is sinking into the sand in real time gives you a sense of adventure and danger. Like Indiana Jones running away from the big Cocoa Puff. Even in the outside section where the pillars are fallen or like falling down around you, it really highlights that adventurous feeling because this like entire temple is crumbling down around you as you race. It makes the whole thing feel like it's someplace that's been like neglected and abandoned for thousands of years, and you're like an explorer who's just now discovering it. And then you gathered up 11 of your best cartoon pals and motorcycles and go-karts to defile the whole thing. I also appreciate that they try to add a few little splashes of color beyond just, the yellow that's everywhere, with the cacti and the little oasis. It makes it feel like at least a little livable and not just some completely barren wasteland. They do a great job of putting everything to such a grand scale, both literally and figuratively. You have these massive towering statues and the big Yoshi whenever you first enter the track. and those are literally massive compared to you and all the other characters. But it's also figuratively grand because it makes it seem like there's an entire culture or civilization that was here that led to them building these monuments. I really like the idea that this was just like a normal human civilization, but it was Yoshi that was ruling over everyone, and you know, he's Yoshi, so he's just chilling there. But they still bring him like grapes, and they're still, you know, they still treat him like a king, or maybe they like revere him as a god or something, but the whole time he's just sitting there like, Yoshi! And they're like, yes my lord, of course. And then they start constructing the big Yoshi Sphinx. Probably not that much thought went into it, you know, at Nintendo headquarters. They were probably just like, what if we turned Yoshi into a Sphinx? And then Miyamoto's mind is so blown that he actually explodes. Welcome to Moo Moo Meadows. As someone who grew up with fields full of cows everywhere, you know, I gotta say this is pretty accurate. It's a good, goofy cartoon countryside, and it feels like I'm trapped inside a computer that's still operating Windows XP circa 2001. Trapped might not be the right word here though, because that would imply that I want to get out. But here, you've got everything you could ever need. A lifetime supply of milk, these silos have to have enough grain to last for years, and a comfy windmill house generating its own power. But most of all, a lifetime supply of meat. Mole meat. Well, you didn't think I was talking about the cows, did you? Of course not. No, I would never. No, these guys are adorable. And not to mention, you get to wake up every morning to like rolling green fields and bright blue skies and just the most overall gorgeous scenery. It's a simple little environment, but sometimes in a world filled with rampaging fire-breathing turtles embarking on worldwide conquest driven by his unrequited and, frankly, unsolicited love to the princess of said world, you know, sometimes a little simplicity doesn't hurt. Everything from the low white picket fence to the big barns and the cows roaming around, and especially the sound of cowbells that plays in the opening, it all comes together to create the quintessential quaint countryside atmosphere. But if the country life ain't your style, maybe you prefer the quintessential city atmosphere in Moonview Highway. Moonview Highway feels like a lore-accurate city interstate. It's bright, it's loud, it's chaotic, and everyone drives like a fucking maniac. Just like Wario's Goldmine, this is one that I see on the selection screen, and all of a sudden my anxiety goes from about like right here to about like right here. I just hate this track because, yeah, that's why. But for as much as I despise this track, I cannot deny that it brings the vibes. The city is sprawling with the buildings in the background all towering over each other. Signs and billboards overlapping like one big mural of capitalism. It might just be a big picture of a fire flower, but hey, it gets the point across. And there are just a million different lights. The lights from the windows, the headlights of the cars, the street lamps. Everything about this city is just radiating with light. The skyline in the background even has this faint white glow that just bleeds into the dark night sky. And if you've ever seen a big city from like miles away, that's like a real thing. So I love that they included that. I also love the attention to detail with the windows. The fact that some are lit up and some aren't, seemingly at random, kind of gives off the sense that there are actual people living in there. Or maybe it's Goombas or Shy Guys living in there, or I don't know, cataquacks. But the point is that someone is living or working or sleeping in each one of those squares. It's a lot more realistic than if they just, you know, lit up every single one of the windows. And it makes the whole city seem so much more alive. There's so many ways they add to the fast-paced mayhem. Sure, there are cars driving like maniacs, but they also have like the item blocks moving up and down the roads, the toll booths that open up for you, and some of the lights even flicker like these ones on the bridge here. But yeah, there's just so much that's constantly moving around you. I love the contrast between the city section with all this busyness and then the peaceful woods section overlooking the lake. Having these two side by side in the same track makes the city seem infinitely more busy and chaotic, and then the lake infinitely more peaceful and serene. The background in the forest section is super easy to miss, but the level of attention to detail here is just as good as it is in the city. There's actual hills and a whole mountainside with cliffs and everything. There's different kinds of trees, closer ones that are like a little bit more three-dimensional, and then there's some that are more like a pattern, and some in the background that are like a completely different kind. I don't know, maybe like a birch. Comment down below if you know what kind of tree that is. But you also have the big bright moon lighting up everything. And cartoonishly big full moons always give off a kind of a spiritual vibe to me. And that's especially accented by the way the crystal clear lake water is perfectly reflecting the sky and the moon above. And once again, that's really great contrast from the lawlessness that you'd expect from the city right next door. Did you know that Moonview Highway is going through a drug epidemic? I mentioned just a second ago about flickering lights on a bridge, and would you believe it? It happens a second time. Although there's just something about this one that feels more special. Having this bridge between the bright city and then the moonlit lake makes it a literal bridge, but also a metaphorical bridge between the chaos and the calm. This bridge is such a liminal space, and it's so appealing to me because of that. Maybe it's just the Wii era nostalgia talking, but this bridge is kind of like the bridge between my childhood and adulthood, where with my childhood I got to just play games all day and not worry about anything, versus adulthood with all its goofy responsibilities. Again, it's the calm and the chaos. And this is like the exact bridge that links those two together. Didn't think this part would get so deep, did you? I know I didn't. I didn't even like this track before I started this video. Ah yes, there is the circuit. Yet another course set in an eternal golden hour. That was my SpongeBob narrator impression. How'd I do? Please, did you like it? Please comment below if it was good. In all seriousness, there is so much to like about this track. It's tropical, it's at golden hour, it's set in this little beachy seaside town. Are you noticing a pattern yet with my preferences? For all of the insert character name here kind of circuits that there are in Mario Kart, this is easily one of the most creative ones. I'd say the golden hour lighting is this track's most defining feature, because it's honestly more orange than it is gold, and it's a super creative way to represent Daisy's orange color scheme. You can sometimes notice that it has a bit of a gradient into the night sky, and having that little bit of contrasting color really helps prevent it from seeming all flat and samey. It also conveys the in-world time too, like this is dusk, and that kind of gives it the vibes like this is the last night of a vacation before you have to go home, and you're just trying to soak in every last drop of salty sea air and relaxation as you can before it's gone. It's kind of bittersweet, and conveying all that from just the color gradient of the sky is pure artistry. Of course, you don't get the vacation vibes without the location itself, and this town is giving off the perfect beach town atmosphere. It's got everything you need that I've mentioned so far. Palm trees, seagulls, a bunch of boats, you can even see Daisy's yacht, and then a beautiful shimmering ocean which reflects the orange sky. And that accents those summer vacation vibes insanely well. And it's just overall just so visually unique and gorgeous. I can't get over it. It looks so cool. And then of course, Piantas. There are other little details that set it apart from other tropical courses though. You've got this cool lighthouse at the end of the track, and then the palm trees aren't just your average palm trees. They're fat palm trees. And then everything about the architecture, from the differently colored buildings to the street lamps, it all helps give it that seaside resort vibe. This whole course just feels like summer. It's warm and muggy and sticky in all the best summery ways possible. I know I'm like one of the only people on Earth who actually enjoys that kind of thing, but if I could live in this environment at this time of day for like an eternity, I would do it in a heartbeat. Next up, we have Bowser's Castle, and this Bowser's Castle is the quintessential Bowser's Castle in many ways. You've got the royal red carpets and red banners lining the halls. You've got classic stone walls and medieval architecture. You've got the I know they're called thwomps, I just wanted to do that. You've got pools and pillars of lava. You've got a giant statue of Bowser shooting out fireballs. All of that stuff is stuff that we've come to know as staples for Bowser's Castle. But there are some things that set it apart. First off, you have this wacky hallway with the distorted floors, which I think was a good way to set it apart from the other versions, by giving it something a little bit more magical with an element of fantasy. It also works pretty well with it being a castle too, because I feel like, you know, magical, fantastical stuff like this is commonly associated with medieval castles. You know, kind of like the paintings with the eyes following you. It's something in that supernatural idea, but it's a little bit more unique. Inside where the big fireball spitting Bowser is, there's these like ramps that you can trick off of. And something I found out recently is that this game was actually supposed to be marketed a little bit more like an extreme sports game, you know, because you got like the bikes and everything. I think it was even supposed to be called Mario Kart X for like extreme. And then of course like this, you've got the half pipes everywhere. So in terms of making a Bowser's Castle with an extreme sports theme, I'd say they hit the nail on the head. And really for Mario Kart Wii original tracks, it's one of the best ones that does that. Outside though, it's like a completely different genre. Here it's more like a horror movie. You've got those same scary trees as Grumble Volcano and the pillars of lava shooting up. It kind of adds that fear factor by being at random, while also still being fun to like trick off of. While I honestly can't say that this brings a whole lot new to the table in terms of atmosphere in Bowser's Castles, it's certainly a near perfection of the Bowser's Castle formula. As you can probably tell by that shorter Bowser's Castle review, I'm not as big of a fan of the returning tracks in this game. I like them, I think they're good, but they just don't hold a candle to the completely new ones. I think that's primarily because the new ones didn't have to be relegated to any one thing. There was full creativity in the designing of those. Whereas there's just not as much imagination behind Mario Circuit because it has to be Mario Circuit again. It's pretty much forced to be a plain and basic track. Just like Bowser's Castle, you have all the staples. You got, you know, the Goombas, you got the Chain Chomp, you got Peach's Castle as the setting. None of it's bad. It's still Super Mario, so it's still super fucking awesome. But I just don't know what there is here to analyze that feels especially new or interesting. And the same thing can be said about Luigi Circuit because it's just Mario Circuit, but Big Luigi. Rainbow Road, though, has a lot more going for it. There's a lot of like small stuff whizzing past you as you race to counter the usual feeling you might expect of an empty atmosphere that might come from an outer space setting. You've got asteroids like right at the start, but then you also have like the star bits from Mario Galaxy. They also have you go through several tunnels to provide that effect as well. It makes it feel more bright and fun by not just having the classic Rainbow Road below you, but also just all around and above you. I also noticed the road itself has varying levels of transparency. To me, this kind of makes it feel like you're gliding across space itself sometimes. I also like how they included the Earth below you to give a little bit more sense of spatial awareness, so that one, you actually get a little bit of a background and it's not just, you know, once again, just empty random space. I know I'm focused a little bit more on the racing aspect of it, but like I keep saying, it's empty space. There's just not as much that you can do with that in terms of like building up an atmosphere. But they still do a pretty amazing job despite that. And that about does it. That's a review for the vibes of every new Mario Kart Wii track. Of course, I had to include the last four because they're staples of the series, but personally, most of my nostalgia is for, you know, your Coconut Malls and Koopa Capes and Maple Treeways. You know, the ones where I said nothing feels quite like them. But I want to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. What are your favorite tracks in Mario Kart Wii? And what are some little details and nuances that I might have missed? I love doing this stuff and interacting with people who have nostalgia for like the Wii era or just, you know, just the 2000s in general or games from the 2000s because there's just something so special about them. They're not perfect and polished like many games that came after them, but I appreciate that about them. They're a product of a much simpler time to me. And going back to these games reminds me of my childhood where I could get fully immersed in the worlds and get just so lost in them and not have to worry about a single thing from the real world. And personally, I think that's just pure magic. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. It would help me make a lot more of these videos in the future. This was such a passion project, and I'm really excited to do more like it. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.